Welcome to Talking Business and Life with Claudio Reilsono and Steve Mancini. Claudio and Steve will share their business and life experience to help you grow your business and improve your life. Here's Claudio and Steve.
Good evening and welcome to Talking Business and Life. I am your co-host, Steve Mancini.
And my name is Claudio Reilsono, and as always, we appreciate all of you tuning in. Steve, what's happening?
Claudio, busy days in the summer. Theoretically, I should be relaxing and sitting by a beach, drinking, Mai Tais or...
Oranchata.
No, actually, you know what? I'm going to tell you what. Many years ago, I went on a little family vacation down in Myrtle Beach, and it was the first time in my life I ever had a Bahama Mama.
Okay.
And ever since then, I've fallen in love with coconut rum and pineapple juice. Now, I haven't had one in years.
Never had that.
Oh, it's delicious. It's great because not only is it alcohol unfriendly for you, you get a nice sugar spike, which is good if you're pre-diabetic or really teetering on, But you know what? The good Lord didn't create pineapples and help us learn how to do coconut rum because he wanted it just to sit on a beach.
Remember in The Godfather 2, he goes, Fredo said to Mike, "How do you say banana daiquiri here in Cuba?" He goes, "Banana daiquiri." I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
He ends up whacking Fredo, so,
Maybe because he couldn't say banana daiquiri.
Do it right. Anyways, all right. But by the way, Claudio, as you know, we are working very closely with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, and we have been helping promote that. In fact, I think a lot of folks that are listening probably have heard the commercial. We're putting out another little short commercial. We actually did a couple of iterations.
This one we're doing without a scarf.
Well, no, that's that. The show will do without a scarf. I don't mind the scarf in winter, but it is what it is. But anyways, for the folks that are listening, we are going to be working with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds to promote the first Italian Heritage Night here in Pittsburgh, July 29th, and that's at 7 p.m. They're going to be taking on FC Tulsa. And that's a good one because Tulsa was the team that they beat in the championship last year. That is always a good game. And if you're not paying attention to the Riverhounds organization, there is a lot of good things going on, or a lot of growth. I didn't even realize, he was telling me that they actually played friendlies against MLS teams. Mm-hmm. So if you're wondering where do they stand, it's not a minor league team per se to MLS. It is what I will call parallel. And that's important because I remember we had Jeff on about 6 months ago. And he was talking about the way players move and the contracts and trading players. And soccer is crazy. I mean, if you think, and I don't mean this like in a mean way, but if you think there's no loyalty with, say, baseball and football, it is.
Even less.
Yeah, they sell players in soccer. Like, you can have this guy. We want $20 million for him. And then you still have to negotiate with his contract. Right. And so there is, those pieces are constantly flying. And so you could have a championship team one year and be bust because everyone comes and buys out your players. Riverhounds hadn't done that. They still have a good roster, still a very solid team. But it was just interesting how all of these leagues work together. And for folks that are listening, when you look at, everyone, for example, a lot of Italian folks listen. And they hear Serie A, Serie A. Okay, is there a B? And you say, well, there are. You have to win your way up into these leagues.
Oh, yeah.
And so the Riverhounds, again, they're poising themselves to be one of those top-tier teams. So don't just come because it's Italian Heritage Night. Come because it's actually very good soccer.
It's exciting, and it's a very good organization.
What we call it is it's not American football. It's soccer to us, but football to the rest of the world.
Or some people say gaucho.
Calcio, see. But we also want to thank the fact that we have picked up, quite a few sponsors, and we actually have a few pending. So we are not giving you your shout out until you finish your paperwork. But for the folks that have sponsored us, I do want to give a special shout out to a few folks. First, I do want to start with the folks at Calabria Club and Friends. By the way, Calabria Club and Friends is something I've been a part of for years. Wonderful organization. Sal's been doing a fantastic job growing it. A lot of people talk about how do I get more, youth involved in, social organizations. There was a time 50, 60 years ago, everybody joined a club. Kids don't do that. Calabria Club is the exception. I'm telling you, you go to one of their events, you will see a lot of generations represented in numbers, and that's huge. The older generation was not afraid to turn over the club to the younger generation. They just said, save us a place at the table. Always you get that respect for the people that built it. They appreciate that. And the younger folks are bringing in folks, and that club is absolutely growing. So shout out to Sal and the folks at Calabria Club and Friends. Also, always my friend Sam Patty down at La Prima. They're sponsoring the event. Everybody knows this. Look, this is not kidding. It is the best coffee in Pittsburgh, not just because they're a sponsor. I brought my relatives here. First time in America. About 2 months ago, they came up from Calabria. I took them to La Prima, and it was so funny because she was so, God bless her, nitpicky on coffee. I took her, and I don't blame her. I don't blame her. But that was about as authentic as they could get, and they all nodded in improvement. So shout out to Sam for his sponsorship, and for giving Pittsburghers that don't necessarily get a chance to go to Italy, a taste of Italy through the coffee. Also, I want to thank Sharon and the folks at the Western Pennsylvania District ISDA, Italian Sons and Daughters of America. ISDA is something else I've been involved with for years. But ISDA, everybody probably, if you remember, you're getting La Cosa Nostra. Oops, sorry, wrong show, folks. Nostra Voce. The paper, really well done. The organization, a lot of good fraternal benefits on the organization. And, depending on what, club you're in, what branch, I don't say branch, but, whatever lodge you're in, that's the word I'm looking for. Whatever lodge you're in, it's a very active organization. Some are obviously more active than others. And last and certainly not least, my predecessor, the former honorary Italian consul, Dr. Frank Costa of the Urology Institute of Pittsburgh. Frank has been a dear friend, and he doesn't even know that because when I took over as the honorary Italian consul, Frank was one of the first ones to say, "What are you, stupid?" And I said, "No, I can do this." And by the way, if folks don't know this, I have resigned from that position. Frank was right. God bless him. And I was wrong. But actually, Frank was absolutely very supportive, very helpful, and gave me a lot of good advice. And Frank, I do appreciate that. But I also appreciate the fact that, you step up when it matters, and here you are supporting this wonderful event that the Riverhounds are doing for, to honor the Italian community here in Pittsburgh. Claudio?
All right, we have two other sponsors. One, Dave Reddick, an old friend of mine with National Character Education Foundation. They are an unbelievable organization that really does try to help a lot of kids today through speaking engagements and different camps and things like that. So National Character Education Foundation is one of our sponsors. And Mike Battalini of Pittsburgh, the award-winning Pittsburgh Wealth Management, who is our guest today. They are one of our major sponsors, and we appreciate it. And it's going to be a great event. We have special people involved, and I just can't wait. Now, I want to introduce our special guest today. He's a 1991 grad of Quigley Catholic High School, 1996 grad of Robert Morris University. He has a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. He is the president and CEO of the award-winning Pittsburgh Wealth Management Group in Swickley, PA. He is a fully licensed investment professional as well as a fully licensed life, annuity, and health insurance company. Also a contributor to a great book called Don't Worry, Retire Happy. And you know what, Steve, on top of that, and I mean this with all my heart, great family man. He's just a great guy. He's one of my favorite people, and I mean that with all my heart. I've known him now maybe a year, something like that. Just a great guy, and that's Mike Battalini. Mike, thank you so much for being on our show.
Hey, guys. It's good to be with you. I really appreciate you having me.
All right. That was a good introduction, was it not?
It was. Thank you very much.
Which proves that your check cleared. Thank you very much, Mike.
All right. You know what? Last time we had you on, we wanted people to know about you as a person. And, I always believe in people buy the vacuum cleaner salesman, not just the vacuum cleaner. So, but in this case, we want to know more about the vacuum cleaner. Now, investments and what you do and insurance and annuities and so on and so forth. How has your business changed over the years, both in a good way and maybe in not so good way?
Yeah, that's a good question, Claudio. And, honestly, it really has changed over the years. When I started, I actually started at Heffron Tillotson, a pretty well-known company here in Pittsburgh. I started in their financial planning department and worked up to be an advisor. And we used to do a lot of stock trades, a lot of mutual funds, manage money, things like that. But as time went on and, there was the 2008 crash, COVID, our business really kind of morphed to more of a kind of focused on retirement planning, income planning for retirees. But the most important thing is principal protected investments. With all the ups and downs of the market, our niche has become principal protected investment. It's something that we really believe in. And that's really become our focus over the years.
So again, your philosophy is more Now, when people hear you say that, that doesn't mean that you're not aggressive. That doesn't mean that you don't go after things. Am I right? You're not just running the ball. You're also throwing the ball deep as well. Correct?
Yeah, no, we just feel that there's better ways to do it as you get closer to retirement. I mean, we work with younger people, we do, but to be honest, our specialty really is people that are nearing retirement or already in retirement that, have accumulated a lot of assets, 401k assets, and they're looking to make those assets last for the remainder of their life. And to do that, we really feel and believe that you've got to protect that. Not that you can't, we want to grow your money for you as well, but there's vehicles out there that we use that kind of give you the best of both worlds. And that's really become our focus and really our niche. And, we just believe in it and we really enjoy it.
What are your thoughts about, and I know this is kind of a tough question and we don't want to just put a blanket on everything, but old Italians, what did they do? They put cash away. What are your thoughts on cash investing? Sure, protect your investments, but what do you think of just cash?
Well, yeah, honestly, I think everybody should have some liquidity, no doubt about it. An ample amount of liquidity, maybe a year's salary or half a year's salary, or more. We do love that, but you've got to, if it's just sitting in your bank account and it's not earning a lot of interest, inflation is kind of eating away at it. So we do feel like you have to have it in the market. It has to be growing. The caveat there is we feel we have products that, give you the best of both worlds, where you can get the upside of the market, but you eliminate the downside. And that's what I mean by that has become kind of our niche.
Okay. Steve?
Mike, I want to make $1 million in the next 3 weeks. No, I'm just kidding. No, listen, a lot of people listening to this will say, you know what, a couple of things. Number one, it's a crowded field of investing, of financial advisors, of, financial managers, financial planning, retirement planning. It's a very crowded field. Let's kind of start with a very simple question, which is don't sell me on Mike Battalini. You can do that, sure. but realistically, if you step back and you say, for a listener, it's what, maybe I'm not anywhere near Mike. Maybe I'm listening to you, I'm out in Harrisburg, so you're never going to represent me. But what are the kind of clues that say this is probably a good group to go to and watch these ones?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, one thing, Steve, I'll just say we have clients all over Pennsylvania, really all over the country, but primarily, in the Pittsburgh and surrounding areas. But, as far as kind of differentiating between good and bad, I think it has to be a good fit for the client. They have to feel comfortable. We like to use a team approach. We work with a lot of our clients' CPAs. We also have a number of estate planning attorneys that we deal with. We have a Medicare and Medicaid specialist that's a part of our group. So, we kind of take a team approach to it. You can kind of, I would say I'm kind of like the quarterback. When you come in with your investments, we take a look at your plan, find out what your goals are, what are you trying to achieve, kind of put that all together. And then we look at, hey, your legacy, do you need a trust? Do you need a will? Things like that to try and set up, if there's legacy planning involved, what are your health care plan? What does that look like in retirement? So we're trying to put all the pieces together for clients and make it as easy as possible because I think it gets overwhelming and people feel like, hey, geez, I've saved up this amount, but what do I do if, if I need some long-term care at some point? I think, all of us, Claudio knows I've been dealing with it personally with my mom. It's a tough situation. And, people deal with it every day. It's very expensive, long-term care facility. So there's so many things that kind of factor into retirement these days that we just feel like a team approach is the best way to handle it for our clients.
And let me kind of piggyback off that. First off, I hope everything's okay.
Oh, thanks.
We do mean that sincerely. And, that's the problem with a lot of folks is they run into, one of kind of two lanes. Either life is kind of going along as they think it should, and someone comes along and says, you're not ready, and maybe that moment happens or it doesn't. Or there are people that say, I never envisioned this, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing. People could say, I never thought I'd be rich, and the next thing you know, they hit the lotto. Just being facetious, but whatever it is, there are people that thought, I'll be fine, and something catastrophic comes and wipes them out.
Sure.
planning is very, it's easy to say it's important, but it's something that you can't not do, but it's also dependent on what you can do. So a lot of folks don't know the options that are available, not necessarily getting into specific things, but, how do you, from a personal touch, say, listen, I'm dealing with, say, somebody, let's just say somebody's in their 60s. And, they were doing okay. They weren't making a ton. Maybe they're making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. Maybe they got a whopping, $200K in their IRA. And they thought, well, that would be enough, right? And now they sit down with someone and says, you know what, you're not even close. Between Social Security, God knows where that's going to be, what you thought you were going to pull in. Did you account for any, long-term health expenses? Now, all of a sudden, they're kind of at the mercy of the planner. So how, what's your approach to folks that honestly, let's be realistic, don't have a clue, don't believe it, whatever it is, and, how do you say, listen, you need to be doing this? How do you approach that? Because I think the one thing that someone like yourself would bring to the table is, I've seen A to Z. I've seen good, I've seen bad. I've seen people need, $300,000 emergency and they've got to tap into the IRA or into their retirement because something happened, they didn't plan on it. I've seen people that can kick back, at age 59 and go live in that beach house that they've always dreamed of. But how do you approach people to say, listen, you got to trust me. I've seen A to Z. And even though you're speaking Greek to them, you've got to convince them now that they need to follow a plan.
Yeah, another good question.
We hope so, Mike, or we're not doing our job.
Well, everybody's situation is different. Obviously, everybody has different levels of assets and income and different situations. So, what we try to do is, if you come in, we try to look at your situation, look at your expenses, look at your income, your Social Security, factor all that in. One thing that we do try to show people is that income in retirement really is key. You can have all the assets in the world, but a steady stream of guaranteed income really makes the difference. From my perspective, I've been dealing with retirees for the last 30 years, and I can tell you that clients that have steady, reliable income seem to be more happy or enjoying retirement. They're able to maintain their lifestyle. So that's one thing that we do really try and show people coming in, that, hey, whatever your assets may be, if you can create or if you can translate that into some reliable income, get a budget down to where that, hey, your expenses are being taken care of, but you still have enough income to do the things you like to do, that's going to help your retirement. Some people, don't want to hear it. They don't like what you're, maybe preaching or showing them. But, I feel from our standpoint, we're just trying to do the best job possible, give them all the facts, lay it out in front of them, show them the reasons why we're making those recommendations. And then at that point, Steve, it's really up to them to decide if they want to work with us or not. But, it doesn't matter what products. From our standpoint, we're just trying to find the best fit for that client situation and show them why it's the best fit and educate them. And hopefully, they feel the same way after we're done, giving them our presentation as to why.
And I want to piggyback on that because you said something about income. Ironically enough, today I met with my financial guy, so this is all fresh on my mind. Because and I'd be very blunt, I pointedly asked him, I said, look, I'm at that age. I'm in my mid-50s. I'm not necessarily going to work for 30 more years, but I'm not retiring tomorrow. So right. It's and for people listening, it's a very different planning process when you're in your 20s and 30s and maybe in your 40s versus when you're in 50s, 60s, and 70s about where they're going to move the funds to, the aggressiveness of the funds. And then there's also, and you hit on something, and I want to dig down on this one. You said income after retirement. I do think too many people either are being scared, like they're being frightened out of the belief that there will be Social Security there, or they are over-relying on Social Security being there. And I think the truth is obviously somewhere in the middle, because when you talk about inflation, typically Social Security does not keep up with inflation. Just to Claudio's point before, if you have $100,000 in your savings account and you're earning, say, 2%, and inflation's running 4%, you're actually losing money. Right. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. But I want to go back to that because now at some point, let's just say you're going to retire in your 70s. And I do think, my personal opinion, Mike, and you can agree or disagree with this, I do think people try to retire too early. But that's just my opinion. But let's just say hypothetically someone says, you know what, I'm going to work to my early 70s and I really want to call it quits. I've been working, for 50-something years. I'm just tired. You talk about that income, though. That income is Social Security, but what else is it? Because if they haven't generated sufficient savings in their IRA, then the truth is that they may not actually be able to retire.
That's true, 100%. And that's kind of a harsh reality, Steve, that some people don't want to, buy or agree with or believe. But that is, unfortunately, just the cold, hard facts. If they don't have enough assets and they don't have enough Social Security income, sometimes you just can't retire. I've had many prospects come in and say, geez, I'm going to be 66 or 67. I'm ready to retire. I'm getting my Social Security. I don't want to work anymore. But they don't have enough assets to really generate enough retirement income to maintain their lifestyle. Now, if they make some big cuts and adjustments, they might be able to kind of survive, but it's not going to be like maintaining their same lifestyle as if they were working. So, at that point, the cold reality is, hey, you're going to have to find a job that you like, that maybe you enjoy in retirement, or maybe a part-time job. But, that is the reality of a lot of people's situations.
Oh, no, and you know what? You just nailed something I was about to chime on. There are a lot of people in their 70s now that are going back to work because it turned out they couldn't maintain, and you touched on that style of life. The lifestyle that you want to live after retirement. I don't think people step back, and I think this is because people don't have control of their finances. I always use the money on my own.
Define control of their finances.
I'll give you a good example. I'm about to say a perfect segue into what I call hemorrhaging money. A lot of people do not keep. You remember the old days when you had your checkbook and you had a little paper thing and you'd write down every single check you wrote and you withdrew money? You pretty much knew down to the penny what was in your account. And Mike, sure. I would love to ask you this question. How many people know how much money they have, number one, or how many people actually know what they're actually spending a month? Because when you think about now, everything is automatically being deducted from their accounts. They're paying for streaming services. They're paying for this. They're paying for that. They just pay their credit card at the end of the bill or at the end of the month. Hopefully they pay it off. But that's why I use the term hemorrhaging money, because I don't think they know how much money they're losing from just,
or care.
Well, or I don't think they see it yet. But Mike, you can chime in on that.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Steve, you made me think of something, I see it with my kids, and I think everybody, to your point, we're all paying with credit cards now. It's so easy. Society has made it so easy. You tap your card, you insert your card, and it feels like you're not really spending money because you're not pulling out your cash and parting with cash. And, in the old days, or not old days, we're not that old, but, 25 years ago, hey, you had cash on you, and I still like to pay with cash, but I feel like a dinosaur. If I go to a local store or a Starbucks and you hand a kid, $20, $30 and he has to give you change, he looks at you like you got three heads because you're not using your Starbucks reward card or whatever.
But yet they punish you with this new charge now on credit cards they've been doing.
That's right.
Exactly.
If you pay cash.
But I really feel like this move to plastic on a cashless society has, kind of really ramped that up. I feel like none of us are paying as close attention as we once were when we actually had to pull out cash and part with it to do anything that we wanted to do. I really believe that.
To touch on something Steve kind of touched on a little bit ago, I watch MLB Network, right? These are supposed to be former players who are experts at what they do. And I cringe at what they're teaching. And I mean cringe. It's almost the equivalent of, hey, I want to lose weight. Well, go to eat fast food 6 times a week and make sure that you eat a ton of candy. It's just bad what they teach and what comes out of their mouth, or some of the announcers, some of the things that they talk about. I cringe because I know how the soup should be cooked. Do you do that whenever you watch some of these pundits talk about, it's over, or spend this or buy this or invest in that, and you know what you're talking about? Mike Battalini certainly knows how the soup should be cooked. Are there more bad pundits out there than there are good pundits?
Well, I'll tell you, Claudio, I think with social media, I'm sure you guys are seeing a lot of things. You go on Facebook or Instagram, X, and everybody's an expert. Everyone has a theory. This is the best way to do everything. So yeah, to answer your question, I see guys all the time. These stock tips are, guaranteed to make you, this percentage of return. This is the best way to do it. Your assets have to all be in a trust. There's always seems to be a new, not get rich quick, but a new scheme every other day on social media as to, the best way to do everything. So yeah, social media, I think, has really, just kind of made that explode, and it's everywhere. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. I really do.
All right. Well, we're going to take
especially for retirees.
Yep, I'm with you. We're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from our sponsors and some updates. We'll be right back with Mike Battalini, the president and CEO of the award-winning Pittsburgh Wealth Management Group.
Hi, Pittsburgh. I'm international award-winning filmmaker Steve Mancini.
My name is Claudio Reilsono, professional baseball scout and media personality.
And I'm Jeff Garner, president of the USL defending champion Pittsburgh Riverhounds. Join us on July 29th as we take on FC Tulsa.
We'll have halftime entertainment and celebrity appearances.
Join us for Forza Pittsburgh, a celebration of Italian heritage in Pittsburgh.
Bring your whole family and enjoy a night of Italian food, music, tradition, and Riverhound soccer.
So get your tickets now. And remember, that's FMB Stadium, July 29th versus FC Tulsa. Forza Pittsburgh!
Ciao, Chrissy. Your Italian got so much better. Brava!
Grazie. It's because I learned the best way possible.
How so?
Well, I learned that with apps, grammar books, and even YouTube videos, I could only get so far. I had to immerse myself. I noticed I did best when I was in Italy visiting family. That's where my level really soared.
And wow, did it work?
Thanks. I became much more confident, fast. That's why I created Footsteps Through Time. It's an Italian language experience. You don't just take Italian classes, you immerse yourself in a real Italian village. With lots of fun activities and excursions, it's life-changing.
I see. So, no more boring grammar, impersonal apps, just real conversations, real culture, and delicious food, of course.
Exactly. I'm so excited about this. Learn Italian by actually becoming part of the local community for a week and living it. So if you've been dreaming of Italy and the language, check out Footsteps Through Time in Italy.com. Book now and join the experience.
Andiamo!
Thanks to Greater Pittsburgh Travel. For any of your travel needs, let Tom and the team at Greater Pittsburgh Travel know, and they'll take care of you. For more information, call 412-331-2244 or visit their website at www.greaterpittsburghtravel.com. And we want to thank the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. If you're interested in learning more, you can find their contact information on Facebook at Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. Again, thanks Domenica and the team at the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh for your support.
Hello, everyone. My name is Claudio Reilsono, and I am the author of the book, Lead from the Heart Up, Not the Neck Up, How to Create a Positive Winning Culture on the Field and in the Office. My years as a head baseball coach and a general manager of a pro baseball scouting company, I know that my leadership experiences that I've included in this book will help you become a better leader. You can get the book at ClaudioReilsono.com. Speaking of ClaudioReilsono.com, you can listen to my show, The Claudio Reilsono Show, where I've interviewed such legends as Mario Andretti, Dick Vermeil, Rocky Bleier, and many, many others. And I also have an entrepreneurial program there talking about my entrepreneurial experiences. So hopefully that will help you, and hopefully you will enjoy that. And also, Sports Corner, hosted by Ralph Williams, co-host with myself, Jim Frazier, and Luther Dupree Jr. We appear on 92.5 FM, 1250 AM, The Answer, Salem Radio, every Saturday here in Pittsburgh, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy all the shows, and I hope you enjoy my book.
We'd also like to thank Chris Gonzalez from the Knights of Columbus. If you have any questions about joining the Knights of Columbus, reach out to Chris Gonzalez at 412-605-9074.
Okay, welcome back to Talking Business and Life with Steve Mancini and Claudio Reilsono. We are with our very special guest and president and CEO of the award-winning Pittsburgh Wealth Management Group, located in Swickley, Pennsylvania. And Mike, at the end of the show, please give everybody your phone number, address, and all that. But my next question, why has it gone bad? I mean, like in baseball, I grew up in a great era in the 70s, 80s, and 90s of not just the players, but great coaching. And if you listen to those coaches and players who participated back then, the game is really hard to watch, and it's incredibly hard for me to watch. When did it go bad that they start behaving and acting and spewing what they spew?
Well, again, I think, the internet and social media has really played a big part in that. It's given so many people who aren't, maybe licensed, the right way or have the right education or the right background. They all have a platform now. So, you jump on and you make a video and, you may have no experience at all, but you come across as a good salesman and have a good spiel and people are listening to what you have to say. It's just everybody has a platform now because of our, our phones and the way the society is now. And I think that's really, really what has taken it into a whole different direction.
Mike, let me ask you, let's play a little hypothetical question here and pick your brain. Let's say one of our listeners is 26 years old, and let's just pretend that this listener makes, $70,000 a year, gives a few bucks into their company's IRA, and that's all they do, and they don't have a lot of cash. If you sat down with this person, he says, "I'm going to give you one. We're going to do this for 3 age groups. So we're going to start with the young mid-20s. If there's one thing you would tell that person, you say, you need to be doing this right now, what would it be?"
I would say invest early on. I wish I would have started a little bit early, even though I did start early. But the earlier you can start putting a little bit of, your check away every month into savings or, buy a couple of stocks, a couple of mutual funds, you just have the power of compounding. You have time on your side. So, whatever they're making, if they can take a little bit, 5-10%, and tuck it away, invest it, don't touch it, don't spend it, put it somewhere where you can't get to it, you're not going to use it, unless you have an emergency, but just kind of let that grow. People that do that starting at, 25, 26, they're going to be way ahead of the game. A lot of people, I can tell you, don't get serious about investing until late 30s, early 40s when, they start getting married, having families. And then it's tough because you got a lot more expenses and a lot more obligations. But, the earlier you can start, definitely, the more time on your side and the better off you're going to be.
And I agree with one thing. This is important to listeners. It don't matter how young you are or how little you think you can put in there. My old boss told me years ago, shavings make a pile. Just do something, do it consistently, and don't touch it. Now, you mentioned the 30-something. Let's say now one of our listeners is roughly 45 plus or minus years old, married, maybe a couple kids, makes maybe $100,000 a year, maybe $120,000 a year, has been putting into their IRA for, say, 12 years. What's the one piece of advice you would tell them?
Steve, almost the same thing, but at a little more rapid pace, because, hey, you missed a little bit of a window there of your youth. So you've got to kind of make up for that a little bit. So the more you can do, the better off you're going to be. But it really is about, it was great advice your boss gave you. It's being consistent, it's being steady, putting it away, don't touch it, and just let it grow and let time work its magic.
No, and a lot of folks, I know that there are a lot of people that play catch up. I know the IRS gives you certain times where you can put, if you haven't put so much in, you can put X amount of dollars in to play catch up. I know we were able to do that with our TSP program when I was in the government. Now let's go and let's fast forward. Now somebody is 58 years old, says, "Man, I missed the boat. I'm working. Maybe I'm only making $110,000 a year, but my kids are growing up, mostly out of the house. The house isn't paid off yet, but I've only put a few bucks aside." What are you telling them?
Well, if they haven't put it away up until then they're a little bit under the gun. They're going to have to start socking it away as quickly as possible because unless they're planning on working into their mid to late 70s, you're going to need some time to let those assets grow. So. If they didn't do a good job early on, they're really going to be under the gun to really start, putting it away at a heavier amounts, heavier percentage.
As much as they can. And it's never too late. You may not get what you want out of it. Unless you're 79 years old. I'm not saying even that's too late, but it's kind of too late. Let's be very blunt here. But if you're still working, it's not too late to hurry up and get something, even if that's catch-up payments. Something. I mean, you could try an aggressive fund, and again, but then, Mike, that's what they're going to sit down with you and they're going to say, "Listen, I'm 59 years old. I didn't save as much as I wanted to, but I can finally start putting some money aside. I mean, I'm going to make a leap of faith that there is a big difference between somebody playing, and real quick, you can kind of maybe chime on this. Let's go to the 50-something-year-old. There's a difference between whether I'm going to put you in an aggressive fund, meaning high risk, high reward, big loser, big winner, versus the steady Eddie kind of stock that might get you 3 to 5, maybe 7% a year. not necessarily a heavy growth fund, but you're not going to be a big, it's not necessarily going to be a heavy loss. When you're sitting down and looking at that, obviously what they've got in their account and when they want to retire plays into that, not so much the age. Am I fair to say that?
You are, and I'll tell you, Steve, one of the things that we utilize in similar situations, we use products, it's called a fixed indexed annuity. And a lot of times if someone's trying to retire at a certain age and they're telling us maybe their goal age is 65 or 70, and they're 58 years old, whatever assets they have at that time, you can put into a product like a fixed indexed annuity, which has what's called a guaranteed lifetime income rider. And those riders compound every year. So, whatever amount you are able to put in there, each year that's growing, and it's growing your income for when you're ready to take it at age 65. It's kind of like creating a pension for yourself. Now, you mentioned your TSP. We work with a lot of federal employees, so I'm very familiar with TSP plans. And I'm meeting with government employees all the time, where they're trying to take their TSP dollars and make them last, for the rest of their life. And they really don't have any plan or any direction. And the government, tell me if I'm wrong, they don't really give federal employees a lot of advice or help with that.
No.
So we hold federal workshops pretty much every quarter for federal employees about that. And it's really like anybody with a 401k. We're trying to take those dollars for them, or a portion of it, and create lifetime income, because outside of government employees, there's not too many pensions available. When we were younger kids, our dads, a lot of our uncles had pensions. They worked in the mill and they had a job with a pension. You don't hear that very often anymore. Everybody just has pretty much a 401k unless you're a teacher or a government employee. So people have to, be able to kind of create their own pension. And that's really one of our, specialties, is taking those dollars and creating that lifetime income when people are ready to retire.
And when I left the federal government, I took my TSP and I rolled it over because when you can't keep your TSP when you don't work for the government, but I just rolled into another retirement fund. So, there's no penalties and nothing like that. It's just went from one retirement fund to the other. But you're right, they don't give you a lot of guidance. A lot of companies don't necessarily give you guidance. They just say, hey, you're going to roll in our program. But a lot of people don't even know what they're buying. There are options in these 401, depending on the company, but usually there's options of different funds you can buy. On the TSP, there was a whole page load. I had to look some of them up. I'm like, just to figure out what I wanted to buy. I had no idea. And I got lucky and I did okay. But the one thing about the TSP, it's all about the matching rate. So real quick, irrespective of whether it's TSP or 401k, explain to folks what matching means and why that's important and why that would impact how much you're putting into your retirement, or should at least.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because honestly, we meet with people sometimes that don't, put in what the company's matching, or don't, maximize that benefit. And to me, that's crazy. If it's basically the company's giving you free money. So whatever they're going to match, we really strongly encourage people to put that in and more if you can, but you at least have to hit the match, because they're giving you free money, and over time that really compounds and can really make a difference for you. And if your company's doing it, please, if anyone's listening out there, take advantage of it, because it's a nice situation and it'll really benefit you in the long run.
Hypothetically, Mike, take a 62, soon to be 62-year-old, good-looking Italian guy who wants to stop doing one of his jobs. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. Now, Steve had mentioned something, and you talked about government and this and that. What about self-employed people? What do you advise them to do? Because they don't have somebody who matches, and sometimes they have to take a chance on some things.
Yeah, absolutely, Claudio. You've got to, kind of be disciplined on your own, investing on your own as much as you can, putting away as much as you can. You have to kind of be your own boss, in the sense, that you are, factoring, like you do have a 401k, putting money into your retirement account, trying to grow it, do your research, or get with a financial advisor and let them help you. But you've got to be disciplined, put it away, and accumulate as much as you can for when you are ready to retire, that, you can utilize those assets for income.
Both cash and investments, you're saying?
Well, no, I always like to see people have, a nice cash position just for emergencies, and whatever may come. But you got to have in an ideal situation, you got to have both. You got to have some liquidity for emergencies and rainy days, but you also got to have money that's working for you. You can't, like Steve talked about it earlier, you can't just have money sitting in your checking account making less than 1% and inflation's 4%, and it's not earning anything for you. You've got to have some liquidity tucked away, but you've also got to have money that's working and, bringing you back some positive interest.
What percentage do you like? What is your goal, or what should someone's goal be on a return? Some people say 8, 10, 12. What does Mike Battalini say? What are your goals?
Yeah, we look at it, obviously, hey, we'd like to get as high as return as we can. But like I mentioned earlier, we really believe strongly in principal protected investments. We're eliminating the downside. And, the difference is if we can average, anywhere from 4 to 10% and eliminate your downside, we feel like that's a much better position to take than putting all, so many people come in to see us and I look at their portfolio and they're taking, if they're older, or nearing retirement or in their 60s, they're taking way too much risk. Everyone's so focused on getting the highest return possible and they're taking a ton of risk. And, when you start to accumulate a lot of assets and you're getting older, we just feel like, hey, it's great to get a nice return. Obviously, we want to do that. But we're more concerned about protecting what you have accumulated because, hey, guys, you remember COVID? You remember 2008? In 2008, the market went down 40%. So, if you're 60 years old and you have $500,000 that you've in your 401k and you're taking a ton of risk, and God forbid something happens here with the market and we could have another 40% drop, you're losing almost half of what you've accumulated over a lifetime. So, that's why we really feel like if you can protect a lot of that and still get a nice interest rate return, you're ahead of the game instead of taking, unnecessary risk as you get older. Now, when you're younger, we talked about 26-year-olds and 30-year-olds. Hey, they've got time on their side. They can take a lot of risk. But as you're nearing retirement, we really feel like protecting your principal and getting a nice, moderate return is a much better way to go.
You mentioned some black swan events like COVID and 9/11 years ago, and then, of course, what happened in 2008. But on the flip side of that, would you say that it might be good to buy then? It's like you're buying products on sale.
Sure, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because we always, I do feel like you should take a portion of your assets and be aggressive with it, a smaller portion. But for your, the bulk of your assets as you're nearing or in retirement, those should be protected and getting a guaranteed lifetime income. But we, so many guys come in that have stock portfolios and they like trading stocks. They like, watching the market. They want to own, equities. That's all well and good, and we encourage that. But for a smaller portion, we just feel like if you can whittle the risk down, take the bulk of your assets, protect it, make it, know that it's going to last throughout the rest of your lifetime. Hopefully you can create a legacy for your family. But if you want to still be aggressive with a portion of it, we're totally for that, and we really encourage that as well.
And you know what, our folks are listening, there's no guarantees, and Mike will tell you that, but there are ways to what we will call reduce risk. And I think that's clearly what you're saying, Mike. And I also want to bring up something. Having cash, on hand isn't just about a rainy day. It's exactly about what you just said there, Claudia. Sometimes, the market crashes and you say, well, shit, I took a hand. But you know what? I've got $100,000 sitting in a money market account, and this stock, which is usually, 110, is now down to 64. You know what? It's going to come back. They almost always do. Now you take that cash and you go buy stocks basically on sale, and then you wait till the thing to rebound over 5 to 10 years. Because, look, unless a company goes out of business or really takes some kind of hit, the reality is over the long haul, you will have the ups and downs, but you're probably going up over the long haul. Now, I want to talk
That's
about
true.
And I want to talk about cash because, two questions I want to ask you. Number one is, I was always taught you should always have for an emergency savings, you should have 3 months to cover your bills for 3 months, and that should give you plenty of time to get a job. However, the way our unemployment works, I think we probably could sit there on unemployment for 20 years nowadays, the way some of these people don't do a damn thing. I digress. But I want to ask you that. Number one is, what do you think for a rainy day, and again, it's not necessarily a dollar amount so much as it's a percentage, on a rainy day, how much do you think a person should have in their savings account, number one? And number two, again, regardless of what you make, is there a percentage? In other words, while you're working, you make X amount of dollars. Is there a percentage that you say, listen, when you retire, get used to living on X% of that amount of money, because it will be almost impossible in retirement. I mean, sort of just being independently wealthy, but for most folks, you're not going to be able to live the same way in retirement as you did while you were working. One saving grace that might be, hey, I've paid my house off, that I no longer have a house payment, for example. Now I'm retired without a house payment. So, there's always going to be subtle exceptions. But is there a percentage that you say, listen, get used to living on 80% or 75% of what you were making while you were working, or that is a reasonable goal to live like when you were retirement? So 2 questions there.
Yeah, I would say we always kind of encourage 10% if you can. Put away the first 10%. There's a famous book, and it's escaping me right now, but their whole premise of the book was to save 10%. Don't even touch it. Just put that away automatically. Save it, invest it. So that, that's kind of what we always have encouraged people to do. And as far as, keeping money, as far as how much, I've always heard 3 months or 6 months, if you can, a year would be great. That'd be an ideal situation, but at least 3 to 6 months of liquidity of what your current salary is in case anything would ever happen. But 10% is what I would advise if possible.
Now, as far as what would you say if let's just say I'm by work right now and I bring home, $10,000 a month. Okay. I live on $10,000 a month. I want to retire when I'm 65. I'm probably not going to live on $10,000 a month. How much of that what would be a normal percentage of that I should expect to live on? Or is that really super just depends?
That's a kind of tough to answer, Steve, because I'll put it to you this way. If you had a certain amount, if you had like kind of a dollar amount, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, whatever it may be, we can run specific illustrations to tell you exactly down to the penny how much guaranteed lifetime income that can generate for you. But it's hard to say, it would depend on how much you were saving and how much you had at that time to invest as far as creating, income for yourself in retirement.
Mike, one thing I got to tell you, I mean, we're banging questions at you, we're throwing them at you, and you're banging them right away. So you're doing great, and we appreciate it. And this goes to show, again, the people who are listening, this guy knows what he's talking about. And at the end of the show, I definitely want you to tell people how to get in touch with you. But
Sure.
What scares you? Like, again, you mentioned some events that happen. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what kind of scares you to say, oh boy, I'm worried that this may happen, or is it the political landscape? Is it something else? Like, what worries you?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Claudio. Politically, things that that are going on in the world do scare me. I really used to follow it, nonstop every day. I've kind of gone away from that because it's negative a lot all the time, and it can kind of get you in a negative state. But there's just so many things, so many factors going on in the world right now that it can be scary. And COVID was a huge, I think, scare and tough situation for all of us. And something like that happens again, a huge breakout. It was tough to deal with. So, I try not to think about it. I try not to worry about it. There's nothing that any of us can really do about it. But when you see things going on in Iran and the price of oil, and I do think sometimes the market gets overblown a little bit. So, I do feel like there's probably, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do feel like we're probably going to have some ups and downs market-wise here in the next year. I think there's going to be some pullback, but I think our long-term forecast is good. But anytime there's wars and issues going around the world, it does make me a little bit nervous as to what's going to happen with the markets for sure.
I read a book one time where the guy said the worst quote that you can quote or believe in after, again, a black swan event is, this time it's different. In other words, it's not going to come back. But as Steve mentioned earlier, we can go through different things that happened in our short lifetime, but even going back further, it always came back. So is that a good quote not to quote, this time it's different?
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like you do. I feel like it will always come back. I do feel like, it'll just depend on how long it takes, for the recovery. Where I, kind of advise people, because like I said, we're dealing with pre-retirees and retirees mainly, that's where, again, the principal, they can't afford a big black swan event to happen. If you're 58 or 62, 65, and you've accumulated a lot of assets, you really, it's almost like, hey, I can see the finish line, my retirement. I've built up all these assets. I'm ready to enjoy life and travel and go visit my grandkids. You don't have time on your side to withstand another COVID drop of 20, 30%, or, the housing crisis of 2008, lose 40% of your assets. So that's why we really preach the principal protecting and making sure that your portfolio and your retirement plan is really kind of battle tested and ready for anything that may come in the future.
Mike, real quick, we're almost done here with the show. You said
Yeah.
the word assets. Define to our audience Mike Battalini's definition of assets, real quick.
Well, your personal assets, your home, things like that. But when I'm talking assets, I mean your retirement funds, your cash, maybe life insurance policies, all of your retirement assets, IRAs, Roth accounts, brokerage accounts. That's what I mean when I'm referring to assets.
Mike, again, you've been absolutely fantastic, and I think the world of you, but please tell everyone where they can get in touch with you: phone number, email, address, and Swickly, everything.
I appreciate that, Claudio. Yeah, our website is actually a good resource for everybody. We do offer our book, Don't Worry, Retire Happy, that I worked on with Tom Hegna. He's a international economist, really well known, had a PBS special. But anyway, the website is www.pwmg1.com. So that's www.pwmg1.com. And our company phone number is 412-259-8015. 412-259-8015. And we also really haven't mentioned, but we host a radio show like you guys on the weekends here in the Pittsburgh area, and we just expanded out to Wheeling, West Virginia. It's called the Safe Retirement Radio Show. We're on Word FM, WJS Conservative Talk Radio, WPIT. So we're on several stations here on the weekends in Pittsburgh, and it's been going well. We've been doing it since 2019. And you also asked for the address. We're based in Swickly. We're on 1106 Ohio River Boulevard in Swickly, PA. So Claudia knows where we're at, but we're pretty easy to get to. It's pretty convenient, and it's right off Route 65.
Awesome. And Mike, I'm going to put that on the description. So folks that are listening to this, go down to the description. I'll put a link to the website out there. And I do encourage you to go out and follow Mike again and get a copy of the book. Go listen to the show. Knowledge is power. Don't be afraid of finances. Don't be afraid of the world. Don't be afraid of anything. Mike is a good Catholic, and I try to be as best as I can. And I know one thing, that no matter what, the good Lord's going to call us all home. Whether we're rich or poor is irrelevant. It's how we lived our life. And so folks that are worrying about retirement or money, it's like, you know what? Humanity has survived far worse things than a few market crashes. I mean, we've had world wars, atomic bombs have dropped. We've had entire nations come and go. Empires have fallen. The absolute worst of humanity we've had, it is, earthquakes, tsunamis have killed hundreds of thousands of people.
Pirates having 25 consecutive
right.
losing years.
That's right. So, I would just say this from the folks that are listening is, one, as funny as it sounds, don't worry. You get a good financial advisor, let them guide you. There are some things they can control. There are things they cannot control. And like to Mike's point, if the market decides to go tango uniform tomorrow because there's a major war, you're not the only one suffering. And I think people got to understand that, because I think that's the one psychological thing what happens to a lot of people when the market does crash, or when things dip, or when they lose money. And remember, you haven't lost it till you sold it. So that's the other thing I want to mention. Don't look at your statement all the time if it's your retirement statement, because one month you're going to be like, hell yeah, I'm ready to retire next month. And the next time you go back and look and it's down 20%. Until you sell those assets, you have not lost anything.
Great point.
Nor have you made anything.
That is a great point. So
you need to just not look at, I tell you, I don't look at my retirement. I just know that I'm buying into it. At the end of the year, I look at the statement, but I don't babysit it, because there's nothing I can do. It's just going to add another layer of worry that I don't need. So folks, get a good advisor. That's Mike. That's why I kind of pushed you and said, which folks look for, because you're not going to have everybody. There are going to be people out there with other advisors. I think I've got a fantastic advisor, and I trust him. And that's the key. If you can't trust that person, if they're not looking out for your interest, because I get it, Mike wants to make money, my advisor wants to make money. I don't have a problem with that. But as long as they're looking out for me to the best of their ability, I'm fine.
And Mike is as good as it
Right.
gets.
And
Trust
whatever
me when I tell you.
happens-
And I don't say that about anybody.
No,
Mike is wonderful.
And
He really
whatever
is.
happens, happens. You cannot control it. So, Mike, you just keep doing the best you can for your clients. I know they probably appreciate it, and I'm sure they give you an earful when the stock dips, and they go, "What the hell? What can I
Everything's
do
Mike's
about
fault,
it?"
yeah.
It's right. You're the hero or you're the goat, no matter how it goes. So I do want to thank you again for taking time out of your schedule, answering a lot of questions we threw at you. Again, folks, please tune into their radio show. Get educated on this, and then the more you know, what happens is there's two big things. One is the less you fear, because it's not the great unknown. It's like, oh no, what do I do now? You don't do nothing. You just sit on your assets until the market rebounds, which it almost always does. Knock on wood, thank God willing. It almost always does. Go look at the market. For the last 100 years, I've seen the trending, and it's up. It's hit some big bumps along the way, but it typically goes up over time. So don't panic when the market goes down. And the other thing is, again, until you've done something, don't do anything unless your advisor says, yeah, that's probably the right thing to do at this moment in time. So, listen to your advisor. Trust your advisor. Get a good advisor. And Mike, one more time, thank you very much for doing with us. You gave me some good things to think about, and I'm actually going to go out and get a copy of your book.
Mike, you're the best. We appreciate you, brother. Look forward to seeing you soon.
I really appreciate you guys having me on. Thanks so much. You guys do a great job, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. We'll be seeing each other soon, buddy.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, we hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. As I keep saying over and over, Mike Battalini is the best, and make sure you get in touch with him. We appreciate all of you tuning in. Steve, I appreciate you. Thank you. And as always, thank you, Mom and Pop.
Thank you for listening to Talking Business and Life with Claudio Reilsono and Steve Mancini. Tune in next week for more impactful business and life experiences with Claudio and Steve.